Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us, Sir Mark Ogden from ESPN and the Mirror's Andy Dunn. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the Back Pages ahead of a big weekend in football. In the Eye, Postecoglou keeps up his offensive on bruised egos. Tottenham, their central story, darts above there. Stop excuses or leave, says Postecoglou in the Telegraph Sport. Meanwhile, some concerning comments from Pep. I can't sleep, I can't eat. The Express, Thomas has no doubts. The New England manager ahead of the World Cup draw, at the World Cup draw. Show me some fight. Werner, the Tottenham story. A derby is not normal one for Amorim. The Star has the American dream. After England's World Cup qualifying draw, Thomas aims to silence doubters with a state's glory charge, and we're going to need a bigger squad. That's Pep and Manchester City again. The Sun back page, happy 2-year Thomas Tuchel, almost a new year, I suppose. Man United created this with Marcus by rewarding rubbish behaviour and displays with huge new contracts. Troy Deeney with a pretty scathing assessment of Marcus Rashford, and Mario's ditched. The Times, Tuchel's white flag, that's regarding Ben White. Ange, put up or shut up. I'm suing as I'll need care for brain damage. Very serious story from the world of rugby union from Phil Vickery. OK, Andy, let's start with a story in the Eye. Ange Postecoglou, John West reporting for them with the headline, Postecoglou keeps up his offensive on, quote, bruised egos. Ange Postecoglou's doubled down on his criticism of players. What did you make of his pre-match press conference, Andy?
I thought he was very, very strong, Teddy, but you can't help but think back, can you, to Antonio Conte's rant, ironically, at Southampton in 2023, and he was gone soon after that. Spurs take on Southampton, same game this weekend. It's not quite at that level. But you know what? When managers do this, we like it. It's good copy. It's good copy for us. And I think your fan and your Tottenham fan would initially say, you know what? Well, he's right to call out Timo Werner if he thinks his performance is unacceptable. He's right to say to the players, listen, you know, don't come moaning to me. You've got to get out there. We're short of players. You need to get out there. And I don't want any bruised egos. If they are, they can leave. I think everyone's instinct as a football fan is right. However, the other instinct is to think when a manager comes out and criticises his players in the middle of a bad run of form, then there's something wrong in that dressing room. There's a schism between the manager and the players. You can't help but think that might be the case. And in a way, Ange has to take responsibility himself, doesn't he? You know, since that win at City, they haven't won in 5. That win in City represents, I think, only his only win in 8 games. Postecoglou himself and the systems that he plays, don't forget, that are so vulnerable. He needs to take responsibility as well. I like him being honest. I like him criticising players if he thinks it's right to, but I do think it hints at trouble in that Spurs dressing room, and we've been down this road before.
We have, and head coaches have very different policies on this, don't they? Criticising players in public, Mark. I know that Ruben Amorim has said that he'd rather get sacked than do so ahead of getting the Manchester United job. In the Telegraph, they have the headline, Stop excuses or leave, says Postecoglou. It's a big week for Spurs, isn't it, Mark? They've got Southampton, they've got Manchester United in the League Cup quarter-final. How many divisions could this cause in the dressing room, particularly with a player like Timo Werner, who's been singled out, who doesn't strike us as perhaps the most confident of players sometimes?
No, and I think the problem with Ange is that it's not just his players that he's criticising. He's also had a few run-ins with the fans recently. You know, there was an incident at Bournemouth after the game where he kind of confronted the fans. So, if you're kind of taking on your fans and taking on your players, you don't really have much left. You know, you need one of those groups, you're not both on your side to get through a difficult period. So he's really hoping that he's got Daniel Levy on his side, because that is all that matters now. If he's gone as well, if the players and the fans and the chairman are beginning to lose patience with Ange, that doesn't bode well. And you're right, it's a massive week for Tottenham because, you know, Southampton is a game that they should win. They should really beat in Rangers at Ibrox on Thursday night, considering the quality of the players that they've got. But I think the biggest game is Man United on Thursday, because Ange keeps telling us that he wins a trophy in his second season. Well, that is his big chance. You know, Man United are in great form right now. And if Tottenham can beat United and get in the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup, that could change everything. That could transform the whole outlook, give the players confidence, make them believe in Ange a little bit more if they're not doing so right now. But if they lose, if they lose that game, then you can imagine what the scenes will be like at the stadium on Thursday night with Liverpool next at the weekend. So it's a massive week for Ange. But I just think that the messaging that he's coming across, that it's a bit like his tactics on the pitch, isn't it? It doesn't change. There's no nuance to it. It's exactly the same as it is on the pitch. It's going hard, and it's the same approach. I believe in myself, and if you don't like it, tough. And that's what we've heard all the time from Ange. But as a lot of people have said, sometimes you have to change your approach and alter your approach on and off the pitch to get some results, and he's not doing that.
No, relentless sprinting, isn't it, when you look at the stats, and lots of muscle injuries as well, Andy. Back page of the Daily Express has shown me some fights, Werner. What's your take on the particular singling out of Timo Werner?
Well, I sort of a player of his ilk as well. I'm slightly surprised. When I've seen Timo Werner, you can generally level an awful lot of criticism at him, but the one thing you can't level at him is a lack of effort. There are plenty of things you can say about Werner, about his finishing, about his final ball, about his calmness in the final third, but generally he puts in a shift, and clearly. And Postecoglou didn't believe that was the case last night. I'm surprised at it. That's all I can say. I thought, and I look at that Spurs team, and I think if you wanted to single out someone in particular, it wouldn't be Werner. But he does, and again, that's his prerogative. Whether or not he does it to us or behind closed doors, then I think we know what most players would prefer to happen.
Yeah, we'll see if Werner plays. He says he does need him ahead of that game against Southampton Sunday evening. That takes place. Manchester City have the Manchester derby as well. We can go to the back page of the Star. Probably a similar theme, I suppose, in terms of Telegraph. In fact, we've got this from Pep. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Am I losing my mind? Guardiola on his inner turmoil. Mark, just explain where we think these quotes have come from, and very concerning quotes.
Yeah, so he was speaking to the former Italy striker Luca Toni, who works for one of the Italian TV channels before the game in midweek against Juventus. Now, Pep and Luca Toni go back quite a way. They played together at Brescia when Pep had a couple of seasons in Serie A, so they have got a good relationship. And it's not the first time that Luca Toni's spoken to Pep. He did an interview with him before Inter Milan played at City earlier this season, so they have a rapport, and Pep does speak to him. So it was a very revealing interview. I think Donny will tell you that Pep played it down a little bit today at his press conference. But to say those things, in the situation that you're in, it was obviously it's 1 win in 10. It was 1 win in 9 when he said it before the Juventus defeat. We're all questioning what's happening at Man City right now, and how on earth they can go from being, the best team in the world to a team that has lost 7 out of the last 10, and how Pep can go from being this manager that had never had a crisis. Whatever Pep has experienced, he's had seasons where they haven't won trophies, they've had a good bad result. He's never had a crisis. But this is like gone beyond a crisis now. So if he's saying things like he can't sleep at night, I think he's saying he only eats soup at night because he can't digest his food properly. That's a real concern. I mean, if anyone else was saying that, you'd think, blimey, what's going on here? You'd be very concerned for their well-being. And Pep's saying these things, in the public domain. So it just adds to the question as to whether he signed a 2-year contract only last month to stay till 2027. Does he really have a heart to see it out? He actually said when he signed that contract that a month earlier he was ready to go. He was thinking this would be his last season, but he changed his mind because at the point they'd lost 4 on the bounce. Now it's more than 4 on the bounce. Now it's 7 out of 10. So should we be asking questions whether Pep really is going to stick around for 2 more years? Because as it looks right now, he's got 8 months of the season to go. They've got the Club World Cup in the summer. Is he going to be able to get there? Because he looks burnt out. He looks out of ideas. But to be fair, as Donny will tell you, that he said differently today. He said that nothing to worry about.
Yeah, indeed, Andy. On that note, they seem very alarming quotes, don't they? But we weren't there. I suppose we don't know the tone. We haven't yet heard the conversation between him and an old friend. But what's your experience of Pep Guardiola at the moment, the man you see before you?
Well, yeah, Mark's right. Today he was asked about what he said to Luca Toni. He also, in that interview with Luca Toni, referenced, the head scratching that we saw during a recent game, and he actually suggested that was some sort of skin complaint. He went into great depth with Luca Toni. This was put to him that, was it affecting his sleeping, his eating? And he said, well, essentially, he didn't say it wasn't affecting it, but he did. And he said he was more uncomfortable with the fact that they were losing than he is when they're winning. He said that. But then he did say, I'm fine. And in particular there, what Mark has said about him lasting 2 years, he didn't suggest one bit that he was regretting, signing a 2-year deal. He seems to be, I don't know, doubling down on the fact that it'll be sweeter when they do make the comeback. But what I would say about him, Teddy, and I think, it's interesting we talk about Ange, who's basically come out having a go at one of his players and some of the unnamed players. Pep does the opposite. He says these players are playing really well and he absolutely loves them for what they're doing. But today, in particular, he spends a long time bemoaning their injury issues. I mean, a long time. In answer to one question, it went on for 3-4 minutes. He came out with this idea that listen, we're missing Rodri. And when Michael Jordan left the Chicago Bulls, they couldn't win the NBA. And we're missing Phil Foden most of the time. He was the best player in England last season. Now, yes, these things are right, but I thought it was an inordinate amount of time moaning about the injuries that have stacked up. Yes, they've got injuries. Spurs have got injuries. Other teams have got injuries. I do think that I was a little bit surprised he didn't go down the road as, okay, we've got injuries. We've got to deal with it. We've got to crack on with it. We've got to find some form back. We've got to find goals from someone other than Erling Haaland. We've got to defend better, and our goalkeeper has got to play better. Rather than saying, well, the reason why we're in this predicament is because we've got all these injuries.
Yeah, a lot of focus on the injuries in the schedule, wasn't there? One of those players not listed there but is missing is John Stones in the back page of the Star as well, pictured with the headline, "We're going to need a bigger squad." Pep Guardiola has told bosses he'll need a bigger squad to cope with demands. Right, Andy Dunn, we should have brought this to you, Andy, but we'll throw it to Mark now as well. I think you've touched upon the themes there. Mark, what did you make of this? He's famously liked quite a tight squad. Is it just the nature of the squad he's got, or is there something in this that you need more players now as the games ramp up?
Well, I think, you probably do need more players. They've got a season which doesn't end until the middle of July if they get to the Club World Cup final. So, yes, you probably do need players, especially after a tournament summer. But I think one thing that Pep has denied recently, but I think it's clear for all to see, is that this squad is getting old. They've got Kyle Walker's 34, Gundogan's 34, De Bruyne's 33, Bernardo Silva's in his 30s, Stone's in his 30s, Ederson's in his 30s, De Bruyne. We're talking about a squad now that all of a sudden the key players are the wrong side of 30 and showing their age. And that, when you've got a load of games and a big backlog and you've got people like Rodri that are injured, so it means that Gundogan has to play a lot more than he should have done. That's the problem. I was in Turin on Wednesday for the Juventus game, and it was noticeable that there's no legs in City's midfield, absolutely nothing there. And he kept De Bruyne and Gundogan on the pitch for 90 minutes when it was clear that the Juventus were, by the end of the game, running rings around the City midfield. So you do wonder why Pep isn't making changes sooner, why he's not rotating his squad a bit more. He has got the players. City have got a fantastic squad. But it was interesting he talked about the schedule. Man City in the Club World Cup next summer, and it seems that nobody wants this tournament. So Pep should come out and say it, rather than kind of tap around a little bit, tiptoe around it. Come and say that this tournament is going to damage my players. It's not good for the squad. But as we know, the club owners are the people that haven't said anything about it. They want the money. It's going to be very lucrative for Man City and all these players that are on big contracts. But if Pep is concerned about his players in injuries, he should say this Club World Cup is a tournament I don't want to be in.
Champions League's expanded as well, isn't it? At the moment, they're destined at best for a playoff place as it looks. So let's talk Express and the other side of the Manchester derby, Ruben Amorim. And by David McDonnell here, derby is not normal one for Amorim. Ruben Amorim is relishing his first Manchester derby, but he claims it will lack a real edge because neither side is fighting for the title. Is it the most evenly balanced derby since 2011, 2012? What do you think, Andy?
I think it is incredibly evenly balanced. I personally would have Manchester United down in my book as slight favourites, only because Manchester City look like conceding a goal to every counter-attack that comes their way. They really do at the moment. Now, obviously, United aren't in great form either, but attacking-wise, I think they've had a little bit of an uplift under Amorim. They look sharper, they look